Welcome back to Horses of Courses. I'm Tania,
I'm Susanna.
and this is your February 2026 Horses of Courses episode. We are squeezing this in the last couple of days of February. It kind of worked out. Susanna had been traveling to Texas to visit with her dad, and I've been driving horses here and there, and there just hadn't been a time where I came through her part of Kentucky with her in town. I missed her by just a couple of days. I guess last week I was going to outside Indianapolis to take West.
How dare I go while my dad has heart surgery, so you couldn't podcast?
Right. It was very inconvenient and rudely scheduled. Even if I do say so myself. So I was dropping a Wrigley off to Dixie Marisi and nearby where Susanna is, and then went on to Indianapolis, and she was in Texas. But as it happened, we are taking this adorable little baby Belgian up to
Little.
Well, he's a baby, but he's probably 16 plus hands.
He's not little.
Not little. We're taking him up to Gentle Giants as a transfer because we thought that would just be a better fit for him. And she drove in because she took a call yesterday that lined up where there's a herd of 4 horses, one being a feral stallion.
And what is Heart of Phoenix like best?
If it isn't a feral stallion, we don't want it. And that's what Susanna said to me as she encouraged me to agree to take them. And I said, well, I don't have anybody to ride with me.
Well, the pregnant mare needs our help.
Yeah, there's a pregnant mare in the herd, a feral stallion, an old pony, and a gelding. And it just happens to be very near where we are meeting Gentle Giants to transfer Kramer, this Belgian. So she drove in last night and is riding with me so that we can get this all done. So that said, we also we're getting into what is, I think, of the incredibly busy part of the year for Hop. We get a little bit of lull through winter, but we are now coming up to ATFO, and if you don't know what that is, that's Appalachian Trainer Face-Off prep. We are coming up on prep for Equine Fair in Columbus, and then after that we have ATFO pickup, and it stays incredibly busy through August. So, pretty much March through August is, I think, of our very, very busy time. And speaking of Equine Fair, we don't have it finalized what horses are going yet, but once we do, if you are interested in donating to help that really worthwhile event become a success, we will put up options for you to sponsor the 4 horses that are going. There's stall sponsorship, transport, funding, lots of ways to help. And every year, most of the horses that go up for that end up adopted. We've been really happy with the bulk of those adoptions. We usually take young horses. We have Steel, the baby that was born at the rescue.
While I was on the phone with you.
Oh yeah, I was leaving the rescue. I was like, oh gosh, this mare is having her foal. He will be there. He's a coming 3-year-old standard bred, and I think the other horses, we're not certain who will be going. There's some that have applications in that may adopt before that time.
Moki's probably going to find out.
Moki probably will go. She's a coming 2 or coming 3-year-old Pasifino. Coming 2-year-old Pasifino filly, and potentially, I guess, Red.
Well, she has 2 absent on her now.
I saw that, so she may not make it. So just stay tuned. Equine Fair, the adoption event, it really is a great event, and we'd love to see you if you attend the Columbus April Equine Fair. Stop by, say hello, and plan to sponsor. That's really a good thing to help us out with. And I could even say, if you wanted to volunteer for a few hours, if you're listening, we'd certainly like to talk to you about that. If you are in visiting from elsewhere when we are there and you just like to meet the team, we're there from Wednesday through Sunday afternoon. So that's the, I think, 2nd week of April, I'm pretty sure. And we look forward to it. The team works so hard at it. I think Susanna's never been.
I have been, but not with Heart of Phoenix.
Heart of Phoenix. She doesn't want to go with Heart of Phoenix.
It's not that. It's just, it's too close to all the other things. I can't just keep coming in and coming in and coming in.
Well, then this year is a relief, which I guess much like last year, what we used to do is we would have a conference in March, we would have equine affair, ATFO pickup, and a trail ride, and it was brutal. And then last year we still did the conference, equine affair, and pickup, and we did through that feral horse clinic with Justin, so that was a lot. This year, really, it'll feel like a relief because we opted to not do the conference. There won't be a feral horse clinic. We will have equine affair and pickup, and so that's a lot more manageable. We're getting old, winding down, getting into our twilight years, and so we just we've learned how to structure things better to make us come to these events with not drained of all of our life's blood. We want to show up and be present. One of the things people will ask, like, what makes Heart of Phoenix appeal to so many trainers and volunteers, talented people that aren't even nearby, they're not even local. And I do think it's how we show up with a lot of personality, a lot of kind of presence, and we want to get somebody in kind of to the fold and figure out how you can help. But if we are so busy that we are showing up run down, we can't really do what we're known for. And I know myself personally, in the last couple of years, we've been spread so thin that I can't always show up the way I wish I could. So this year, I think we have stuff laid out better, and it'll allow us all to be our best selves when we come to these events.
Yes.
But enough of equine affair. I want to hop into something Susanna can talk to you a lot about. This is not, my soapbox. This is hers, but it's a good one. I've run into it a lot, but I'm not the problem solver, and that is essentially, I guess I would say, handling your horse's head in terms of haltering your horse, in terms of bridling your horse, bitting your horse, and Where
were we that one time? I can't remember where we went. You and I went to some stables in West Virginia together, and one of our adopted horses couldn't be bridled, and I sat there and worked on it and made it so much better. What were we doing there? It was that you wind out this way country road to get to this barn in West Virginia, and we had an adopted horse there.
Was that we were waiting for them to pick up Knox?
No, because I was too cold to mess with that one. We were somewhere, I don't know where. Anyway, I worked on it, made it much better to bridle that horse.
So when we're talking about essentially when you go in, and the horse.
No, we can't remember what the heck we were doing.
We can't. We're talking about, when your horse throws its head up, or maybe it doesn't throw its head totally up, but it's evading. But usually what they're going to do is have their head above your reach, and you're struggling to bring the head back down.
And you end up getting your nose broken.
Right. And so Susanna can talk to them about, number one, why does this happen? Why do we see this?
I mean, number one, you want to make sure your horse's teeth are in good shape. Have they been floated? Because that'll cause your horse to start throwing their head like crazy. I remember when I was working at the public riding stables, there was this boy who essentially grew up there, and he kept his horse down there, and he went in the barn, he was sorting through all the bits, and I said, what are you doing? And he said, well, I'm looking for a bigger bit. And I said, what for? And he said, well, Buddy just rides like crap in his bit now, so I need something stronger. And I said, well, have you had his teeth floated? He said, I don't even know what that means. And I said, well, horses have to have the dentist look at their mouth periodically and take the sharp points off, or else they start riding like crap in their bits because it hurts. And he goes, nobody ever told me that. And I said, well, coincidentally, the floater is coming to my house next week. I'll take him home with me next week and get his teeth floated. He had big holes in his cheek. His teeth were a mess, and nobody had ever told this fella that needs to happen. So the number one thing is the dentistry in good order. And you can have just had your horse's teeth floated 4 months ago, but they fractured a tooth on something. So that is something to think about, are the teeth in good order.
Because teeth can change very, very rapidly, and you can get um, abscessed, infected, whatever. Or you could have had them floated and the person didn't do a good job and actually maybe made it worse. And
foxtails embedded in the mouth.
Yeah, your hay could have had some foxtail. You didn't realize you get some stuff. And so
this is more speaking for the horse that bridled nicely and then it deteriorated, or speaking for the horse that you've bought and it's got a bridling problem and they have maybe told you that its teeth were floated, but is that a true story or was it done well?
Well, and assume the teeth are in great order, and there have been many a horse we've had that have had these issues and teeth have zero to do with it. And that could be from what? Like what are things you would see where teeth aren't factoring? What you would look at is how are you approaching it? Are
Right.
you doing something?
Or the former person that you bought it
Right,
from,
creating
bridling
trauma.
techniques. So many people want to bridle their horses kind of like with a slam bam thank you ma'am, and it just creates such a problem. When I worked for the public riding stables, almost all of those horses would throw their heads up in the air and you'd have to wrestle them to bridle them, and it didn't take me very long to fix that problem, but it was because nobody had taken the time to bridle them with patience so that it didn't cause them either discomfort or pain when they were being bridled. They wanted to do it fast. 55 horses. Doing it fast is kind of understandable, but then again, if you get them to stop throwing their heads up in the air, you can actually bridle quicker than if you're trying to wrestle their heads like giraffes.
Well, and think about, and also when you're taking the bridle off.
Right.
Yeah, people don't think about that leading to some trauma because they think, well, it's already been done, and a lot of people just drop it out. There's a lot of harshness to how it's coming out,
and you can hear it clink the teeth. Yeah.
Right, and you think about how sensitive horses are, that they feel just a fly light on them and it just sends them over the edge. And think about your own face and what it must feel like when somebody's just all in your face and you create head shyness because, for one, you're not respecting the horse and his ability to say, this is my face, get out of my face.
Susan Sunday taught me when I started getting into horses to bring the bit softly down the horse's nose so that they have a cue that this is coming, and then just rest it against their lips for a minute and just wait for them to open the mouth. And that has been such a wonderful technique for bridling a horse. And, we talk about bridling a horse and having issues, but it's not always related to how you're putting the bit in. Sometimes it's related to how you're folding the ears.
Right.
Or sometimes it's related to the bridle doesn't fit the horse, and the horse knows when it wears that, it pinches the crap out of their head or hits on the nerves in their face.
Or the bit that you're selecting, they know that specific bit, and they have to relearn that, hey, I've grown, I've changed this, it's not the same bit. This bit's not going to create this kind of discomfort in you.
Right.
Giving them time to process. How do they know that if you're the new owner that you're not going to use a Tom Thumb, or you're not going to whatever?
Or bits wear out, and where the actual bar hits the ring, they wear out and they start getting slop in them, and they actually, as your horse's head bobs, they'll start pinching the corners of their mouth. People don't pay attention to that kind of thing. There's just so many components to why a horse doesn't want to be bridled.
Right.
Just so many. Or, the thing that a lot of people don't realize is those oral plaques.
I was just going to say, in the ears.
Horse's ear, and people just think that's some kind of an ugly growth, but it's actually terribly painful.
Yeah.
And so you could really have a horse break your cheekbones over having oral plaques in their ears. And for those horses, a lot of times you've got to get a bridle that you can disassemble and throw behind their ears and then reassemble it once the horse has been it, which I had one at the public riding stables that we had to find a bridle like that.
Well, and since we brought up oral plaques, explain what that is and what you usually have to do to manage those. And we've talked about them before on the podcast, but since that really is something that people are probably overlooking a lot more frequently than we think, what is an oral plaque and what do you do to manage it?
It's a reaction from the bite of a fly on the inside of the ears, and there are lots of varying theories on how to manage that. They came up with something. It's a cream that's a herpes
Right. Because I
treatment
think
cream.
that's what it is, right? Isn't there a herpes virus component?
Yes, there's a herpes virus component, and it used to be the old school thing was for the veterinarian to sedate the horse, scrape that off of the ears, and then every day you had to put this treatment on. But that was such a problem because the horses objected so strenuously to all that people were getting broken noses over that. So then they started saying, "Well, just leave it alone and disassemble your bridle." And then, like 2 or 3 years ago, they came out with a different cream that actually is a lot more effective for that oral plaques. But you still, in the beginning, run across the fact that your horse slings their head, and you have to be really, really careful about that. So, but the treatment is not nearly so painful for the horse as the old scraping it off and putting that stuff burned. And I don't think this stuff burns. The horse slinging their head this time is related to the fact that just they have learned that their ears are painful.
Right. So, I have watched, I think mentioning Susan Sunday is a good example. Susan really, honestly, when we started keeping horses at her barn, I noticed the approach Susan took to bridling horses to be night and day different from what you often would see in the horse world.
It's a beautiful bridling process.
It really is. She does a beautiful job, and to see the shift in a horse who was slinging his head and had his, acting like a giraffe, to them being willing to lower the head and on their own, accept and take the bit, and just watching how that slow, fair process, corrects.
That one you and I went to where I did that in a half an hour, I had that horse significantly better.
Yeah, no, I know that instance. I just don't know the horse. But, don't assume, you can never flippantly say, well, that's just what the horse does. And I have people, well, he's just hard to bridle. No, he's not just, in quotes, hard to bridle.
He's defending
himself, and something has created that reaction, that response. And some horses won't react that way, and they, what I say, just kind of allow themselves to be mishandled. And some horses won't. I appreciate a horse that says, no, you're not going to do me that way. Now, that's the kind of horse I want, that they feel like they can say, no, I've had enough. This is not right. And honestly, that's horses being willing to kind of argue with you to say this isn't fair and create better horse people if you're willing to listen. So that's something I think is important. Obviously, hearing it talked about doesn't give you the visual, but hopefully it inspires you to go out and seek out videos and maybe some one-on-one assistance if you're running into this with a horse. It is correctable. It usually is related to unfair treatment or discomfort. So sort that out. Your horse will thank you, and we will thank you, and we won't have to get the horse into Heart of Phoenix Equine Rescue and fix it for you, and we'll appreciate that. Up next, we want to talk about, I think if any horse that Susanna has ever been involved in Heart of Phoenix with, like, this horse is the one I think she brings up the most, and for good reason. There was so much complexity to it, so many things I think she learned through it, there was so much to this story. So I started out in this horse's story, and then Susanna, was there through the last half of her journey. I got a call from animal control about a really emaciated halflinger mare, likely pregnant. The whole herd looked kind of rough, and I can't remember how they were connected to potentially the sheriff or animal control, but there was an unwillingness to charge the person. I think possibly why was this was a very old woman, and the husband had, I believe, passed away. However, animal control kept having to go out, have this conversation with the lady, and ultimately the county was unwilling to charge, and the mare was skeletal and heavily bred and very old.
Remember, she said, I feed round rolls, and I don't do any of those DAMN teeth floats, and if they can't survive on that, oh well.
Oh well. And so that was the thing. They pitched it to me that this woman's husband had died, and she was just struggling. And I went out and met the woman, and she was a terrible person. Terrible. She'd been breeding these halflingers for years, making money off of them, and that's what she said. She's like, I don't care. If they can't make it with this, they can die. And that was her attitude. Of all the people we've gone out and, maybe there has been legal intervention, that one is the one that really she should have had charges, but they weren't willing to do it. And animal control kept kind of going, wallowing it around back and forth. And ultimately, she was unwilling to surrender the horse. She knew they weren't going to charge her, but she said, if you all will give me $500, then this old mare can go pregnant. But I feel like she said you can't have the papers.
Yeah, she did.
Yeah, she wouldn't let you have the papers.
She did tell us who she was.
Yeah. So the mare was a registered halflinger, bred to a registered halflinger, and the baby could have been registered, but the woman would not let her papers go with her. There was a donor that ended up sponsoring that, because we at Heart of Phoenix are not in the business of buying horses. We will occasionally give a very small sum, but in a case like that, I wouldn't have wanted to push and propagate this continuing, but it was a desperate situation. The woman was at the age in her 80s where it wasn't like she was going to continue breeding much longer, and it just, sometimes things aren't perfect, and this was not a perfect scenario, but the mare was absolutely going to die there. I mean, probably within a week or so she would have died, and heavily bred. So we got this body score 1, 25, 23-year-old halflinger. She was, I think, in her mid-20s. Brought her into the rescue, got her teeth done, had the vet see her, and decided that that she'd be better off foaling out at Susanna's. And the discussion was that it was worth that trip to get her to her place. So then from that point, she goes to Susanna's, totally emaciated. But I mean, you could tell this mare, I would never use the term will to live, because that's, I think, nonsense. But this mare was not downtrodden. So there was enough life there that it was reasonable to say, if her organs don't fail her, this could work. So she goes to Susanna, your vet sees her, and
she says, I'm not sure if you'll be able to pull one or both of them through the birth. She's so emaciated.
Yeah.
But she listened to her lungs, and she told me about when she was due. And then that night, the mare stopped eating and drinking.
Yeah. And Susanna reached out to me, and I said, this horse has pneumonia. Now, I'm telling you, I've done this enough to know, but your vet said...
She didn't say anything. She said, well, come tomorrow and I'll give you the antibiotics.
No, remember, she said I had just listened to her lungs. The lungs still sound good. This was just like that night, right? And I said, that don't matter.
And I said, well, when they're like this, they have what we call silent pneumonia. And she said, well, come tomorrow and I'll give you the antibiotics, which I started her on rifampin that night because I had rifampin left over from Reagan.
And what you'll find in instances like this, and just experience shows you, before the horse ever even gets a fever, and certainly before the lungs sound funky, you have to act quick, because a horse in that condition, they can get bad so fast that you lose them before you even know it started, But thankfully in this instance, caught early, treated early. And how long did you have her before she foaled?
That was Dr. Hughes' first experience with silent pneumonia. You got to appreciate a vet that's willing to listen to somebody who doesn't have a vet degree.
Yeah.
Because now she looks out for silent pneumonia and starvation cases.
And I think it's just a moniker we've given it. I mean, if just what we just, like, it's pneumonia right before it becomes pneumonia, but it's going to happen and become so big of a deal so fast, you're going to lose animals.
Yeah, well, it'll kill, as we've learned, it'll kill them really rapidly because they're so disadvantaged, they just can't handle one more thing.
Yeah, for sure.
I think I had her like 6 weeks. I think she foaled within 6 weeks.
And
it was 7, because we did a 6-week update on her for the hot page, and then she foaled like 6 days later after that 6-week update.
And you have to go back and look at these before and afters, how quickly this mare recovered.
Well, we should use that as the cover photo for this thing.
Maybe so, because she was absolute walking skeleton, to essentially about 85%
She looked,
in 7 weeks.
So much better.
And the baby that she had
came out really, really tiny.
And named her Suzie Q.
Yeah, I didn't know. Her doctor did.
So we knew somebody who wanted, that Susanna knew well, that wanted to adopt the foal very early on.
Yeah.
And so named her Suzie Q. Wasn't it around Easter that she was born? Or am I thinking of a different? I know Bunny was around Easter, but
Bunny was on Easter. I don't know.
But so Suzie Q is, I've used her for the Hop website. Her adopter drives, has taught her to drive, done a lot of things with her. She looks great. She's a beautiful baby. I mean, now she's not a baby. What is she? Probably 7 or 8 years old. I guess it's been so long.
She's turning 7 this year.
Turning 7 this year. And so that was a really beautiful before and after. And
I've gotten to ride in the cart behind her.
Yeah, she's pretty
parades
local.
Every year.
She's pretty local to Susanna. The mare was very aged. She did not survive long after.
She was 21 at her 6-week update. She was
21 years old. She didn't. I don't think the mare had ever had good care in the place that she had been. So she didn't survive long. But she did rehab, and did so very quickly, even though she was under the strains of pregnancy. And I mean, it's a relatively happy ending with the updates and how well the baby has done. I still have thought about that herd of halflingers, and I never could really find out how anything went. I know by this time it's almost impossible that the lady wouldn't have passed away, and I just hope that those horses had an okay outcome. It's just hard to say. But
the baby will be safe for the rest of its life.
Yeah, the baby is
freeze branded. She's not microchipped. She's freeze branded. She's local to me, and it'll be great.
Alrighty, we've got our hot take next. Our hot take. So this one stirred a little bit of controversy when I shared it, but essentially what it was is, from my position, we get, I mean, probably monthly, thousands of calls, emails, messages, and people forget that we are essentially a volunteer team, and they want answers right now. And that's the world we've got. I want it, and I want it right now. And who are you to tell me that I can't have it that way? So we got this message that it kind of spiraled, and you never know, I don't know the backgrounds of folks. This was an anonymous message. I didn't have a name or anything, but it came through to our website, and the way it went was, I want a horse. I haven't had one in many years, so I don't have a vet or farrier, and you can't expect me to have any of that. Hello out there. Hey, well, are you really going to force me to go buy a horse from an auction because you won't approve me through your process? And it just kind of spiraled. We had never responded. We hadn't even seen it yet. It happened very quickly. And then finally, this is not a fit. I'm not interested in getting a horse from you. Okay, well, this unraveled over the course of 24 hours. I see it after the fact, and I'm like, well, alrighty. And so I shared it so that people understand the kinds of things that rescues of all types, dog, cat, horse, what you deal with. And the takeaway is not nearly the first time someone has gotten extraordinarily rude because we didn't move fast enough to suit them with an answer.
But it's not just us though, because I volunteer for a dog rescue. Somebody will send a picture of their dog and be like, okay, let me have this dog that's for adoption. You have to put in an application. What do you mean I have to put in an application? Here's a picture of my dog that I currently have. Okay.
Right. Right. And so that's the other thing is not, you have to approach something with respect. If you aren't respectful to our process, it doesn't mean you have to say I love all of it and I agree with all of it. But if you have zero respect or patience, how could we, from that reaction, feel good about you having a horse? You don't respect our process. You don't respect our time. You don't respect You don't respect the ability of like how you should treat another human being, and you're not teachable. You're not considering, is there a reason for this process? So in cases like that, is someone who comes to us with that attitude someone we are going to be able to seriously entertain as an adopter? It is not someone we could, and there are reasons why. You know what my dad always says, use your head. Well, when he was alive, use your head for something other than a hat rack. You know, um, when you are talking to an organization or a seller, even if you're talking about somebody who's selling a horse, here's the thing: people assume that rescues are the only discretionary agencies of acquiring a horse. I know trainers that sell horses that would not tolerate that, and they're making their living. But if you send Brenda Hanson a message like that, you're not going to be able to purchase a horse.
You're going to get some bad words sent back to you.
Well, you would. And so we try to be very courteous.
We don't send bad words back.
We do not, and we try to be courteous. Now, I don't think that I responded in the end after that unraveled, because obviously also there were probably some instabilities there and various factors, and we understand that. But there are people who, they have those attitudes, and they're going to go ahead and acquire a horse somewhere. And if that's how you are to someone who's not even answered you, how are you going to be when the horse does anything you don't like? Well, my mind says not very nice,
I bet they won't work through a bridling issue.
Right? Like, we didn't take the bit. Wham, bam, 2x4 upside the head. And you can say, well, that's not fair. No, that's just being sensible. That is probably the methodology that such a person would use. Now, maybe they're kinder with horses than they are with people. Maybe communication isn't their strong point. But what they do demonstrate is willingness to be rude right off the bat, willingness to avoid any ability to connect with any kind of patients. And so for us, and willingness to reject an established process. And so that doesn't work for us. If you're communicating with a rescue or a seller, you want to be respectful of their time, give them time to get back to you, understand that just because you want it now doesn't mean that that's how it should work. And, be polite. If you're not polite, you're already starting out saying, I'm not willing to work within the bounds of propriety. So the organization has reason to have pause at that point. So, and Susanna gets a lot of that stuff. I mean, I get the emails, but she gets the calls. They'll be that way you've had the calls like that.
Terrible. Sometimes they're really terrible.
I mean, I know you've told me many times, I see this horse and I want it. When Susanna say, well, we've got to do this and this. No, I'll just do it my own self. I want the horse. Well, I mean, it's simply not how it works. It shouldn't work that way. So it's not rational to make those kinds of demands. So my hot take is be nice, or you're not getting a pony. I like more Santa Claus.
For Santa.
Be nice, or you're not getting a pony for Christmas. All right. This main topic this month, I talk more about this than anything else potentially that I talk about whatsoever in equine rescue, and I'm going to call it kicking the can down the road, kicking the broken can down the road. We've talked about this a little bit in terms of old horses, but not in terms of just the disadvantaged horse. So if you have, what made us think about this as the main topic was Susanna was saying how she would own her horses alcoholic and that are, tendency toward, kind of obesity and so forth. And what was it you said, Susanna?
I said that they've become very easy for me to manage now, but I have to constantly, almost on a daily basis, evaluate, do I need to throw Epsom salt in the water? Do I need to shut the gate to the one field? Do I need to soak the hay? And that nobody else, I could hardly think, would be so observant and particular in order to never have them have a laminitic episode, because neither of mine have ever had a laminitic episode. And I don't think anybody would ever be that particular observant, and I would never rehome either of them because somebody would tip them over into laminitis and they would suffer.
And I want to mention something that would come to the minds of others on here, and I think at Heart of Phoenix we do this a little bit, like we're a little bit of gatekeeping here.
They're my horses. I can't keep their gates. I should keep their gates.
And we do have a little bit of that. Nobody can do it but us. Well, and it's not true. There are plenty of people that can, but will they and should you is the question. Will they? Can you be sure? And
Which is
two,
where I was coming from.
Right.
Will they?
Will they? And two, why put the risk out there? Because it is a risk. And so when you go to rehome a disadvantaged horse, you are really kicking the can you don't want to deal with down the road, or you can't deal with. Now, you may have a health crisis where you can't. You were willing to, but you can't. Is it the right thing in a world where there is such animal crisis to rehome an animal that already or physical need? Is the right thing to do? And there are many people that have talked to us and said things like, well, I rehomed my old horse and it found a beautiful home. But you know what? Most of the time, that's what they tell themselves. I rehomed my horse with heaves. I rehomed my blind horse and it found a beautiful home. But then if you ask, well, where is it? Have you seen it? How did that end? A lot of times what they have to tell you is, I don't know.
They stop communicating.
Or they say the horse is being taken care of, but what you find out, and I've had people come to me and I've had to go in as Heart of Phoenix and fix these things and go get the horse. The horse isn't fed well. The horse hasn't had his teeth done. The horse's feet are terribly out of order. The horse is living crippled. The horse's eyes are hurting constantly because it's blind, but the person who gave them a pasture to be turned out in didn't care, enough to manage the pain and get the eyes removed. So what happens is we tell ourselves one thing because that feels better. But what really happens is a crisis and a very sad situation. If you aren't able to take care of the horse that you say you love, that has special needs, then why assume someone else will? And even if they do for a year or two, do you not feel the obligation to that horse through the end of its life? What about when that person who meant well, they did give it a home a couple of years and they did do what it needed, but now they can't keep it? And that is how horses end up. That is the very reason the broker lot scam stuff exists. It's the very reason the sad posts exist. Could be a broodmare 23, has a big knee, blind in an eye. Someone cared about the horse in theory 5 years ago, but didn't want to retire it, didn't want to euthanize. That would have made them emotional. And they let the horse with the slightly big knee go to so-and-so for 4-H because, well, it was still serviceably sound, whether it was or wasn't. They say that, serviceably sound. Then the horse started getting a uveitis flare. And then a trader picked it up when the kid lost all the interest at the 4-H. And now it's for sale for $600 with a big knee, 200 pounds underweight, and bad eyes. And
it could have. But it's rough, though, because sometimes the vet will tell you, well, this horse is serviceably sound. Or, yeah, the eye waters, but it really doesn't bother them too much. Right. It's rough.
It is hard, and I have to kind of compassion check myself because I have seen so much, it has worn on me. So I'm a lot more apt to come to the situation and be real black and white. And do I think the answer is pretty black and white? Yes. But we all kind of live in the gray area because there are emotions. It's what makes us people. We do struggle. We do think, well, what if? And then we imagine this good story. But horses really are depending on us to live in the practical, likely outcomes. Their well-being depends on that. And so sometimes And I do fault, the veterinary community for this, but I understand why they do it. It is a hard field. It is a field that is relatively thankless in a lot of ways. But I do think we
And if they're
need,
too harsh, they don't make any money. So
right,
it's
then
rough.
it's very hard for them. If they just go to every situation where the outcome is unlikely to be great and just say what the candid truth is, it's going to be hard to keep clients. I wish that we could be better than that, and I wish we could just see the truth. And it makes Heart of Phoenix, it makes us respected within some parts of the horse world. There are others that just think it's too harsh, but the world is harsh, and the truth is harsh. And when you have a horse that has a problem that is going to be chronic, you really need to sit down and think hard about letting that horse leave your property. Often, the really kind answer where the horse does not suffer is euthanasia. Often. And you may say, well, it has a few years left. What are those years going to look like? And what are the odds that the horse will stay safe and have his needs met? And you start talking about, we've dealt with this in breeders that have turned young horses over to us that were conformationally set up to not be able to do whatever their discipline ahead, would be. And they come to us. And while I'm glad that we can do it, we often get, when they come to us with that situation, the outcome is bleak and not usually correctable. And then we are the ones I call like left holding the bag.
Like the unstable pelvis fracture, which it was unidentified when it came, but it was an unstable pelvis fracture that would never stabilize.
Well,
in
and
that standardbred, and then we got such blowback from euthanizing.
nothing would have prevented the owner from coming up with these diagnostics. If you are breeding and making money on horses, you really need to be who's investing the diagnostic costs. And if you find that the horse is got severe, has OCD lesions, or fractured a pelvis in the pasture, or conformationally is set up to break down within a few years, and there are horses that they'll just, we got a young horse. He was maybe a year old, not 3-4 months ago. He was already painful because he was set up to not even move correctly in a way that his body could ever be comfortable. So we made the euthanasia decision. These are things where, the first person to, whether you're the breeder or you're the first buyer, or you're who has worked with the horse and the horse maybe is shown with you, and then something happens, it's, I cannot explain enough how much I hope if you hear this, it moves on you to be the person who makes the choice for your horse, an end of life choice, or that you are going to tough it up and be the caregiver until things deteriorate. But you'll, seeing an ad where a horse has 1 or 2 issues, and I fault rescues for this. A rescue has no business marketing a horse with chronic issues. It is kicking the can down the road. It is not responsible. I don't mean a maintenance issue that is well managed. Then the horse is going to be able to live a long life with some management. Nothing is perfect. We understand that. We have horses that, get Previcox, and, horses that can get get Persinned. Horses, there are management things, need certain kinds of shoeing, but if you're talking about something that is chronic, that will end up debilitating, or that the cost is prohibitive for a home, and the ultimate end is significantly reduced life quality.
Keeps is the one when I see rescues rehoming horses with keeps, and they're like, he needs steam hay and a breathing treatment every 3 days, and I'm like, what?
To what end? Why are we doing this? Here's the thing. Rescues shouldn't be doing the very thing that negligent owners do. When we see a breeder or a negligent owner passing a horse on with a chronic issue, we all recoil in horror and go, oh my gosh, how irresponsible. It's even more irresponsible for an organization to do that, in our opinion. I mean, that's a hill I die on. Now people can argue around it. That's up to you. But I think deep down, when you hear it, you kind of know. It's so that doesn't mean only adopt out horses that are perfect. We don't do such a thing.
We don't even find any horses that are perfect.
There's no such thing. But
maybe one a year.
Does this horse have truly good life quality ahead for a reasonable amount of future? Is the management fair and humane to the horse? Is this correctable?
Can the person you're rehoming it to afford whatever the manageability is?
And have they demonstrated that they are very willing to do these kinds of managements? Do they have access to people who experts to help them, continue with this? There's so many aspects to it. Does the horse win by your choice? Is the horse being served by what you're doing? Is the horse's well-being paramount? Is the horse doing well and thriving?
I get it. I mean, you've got this one you can't ride, and this one is all you can afford, and you can't ride it. But then, for me, if this was my horse, I had this one I can't ride, and I really, really, really wanted to ride, which I really don't want to ride much anymore. But if I really, really wanted to ride, I would probably euthanize that horse so that I could get one that was rideable, and that would not be the mean thing to do.
No, I mean, because here's the thing, because if people hear that, what they need to understand, pasture sound is mostly a myth. Mostly. Now, there are exceptions, and we have some like that. But often, a horse is not sound to ride because it is dealing with discomfort even when it's carrying its own body around, and we call it pasture sound. Is it really, though? And people say, look, they run and play. I've seen horses with legs dangling off, fractured, broken, severed, and the horse gallop across a field, out on strip mine land. So that's no gauge. If you have a horse that is no longer riding sound, then it's time to talk about, is this horse truly comfortable even carrying its own self around? And if it is, what is the reason that it is not sound enough to be ridden? And is this something that's going to just progressively get worse? And I've talked about this on the podcast several times, and I do it a lot in person. People say it's just arthritis. Arthritis ends a horse's quality of life. It ends it. Not always when it first starts, but it is degenerative. And every now and again, it'll be somewhere that it fuses, but the horse has to suffer through that process. People say, well, give it injections. We've talked about this. You can only inject so many times. It continues to cause degeneration in the joint. It doesn't fix it as a rule. If you have some remodeling things, you do all that, and some exceptions, not usually the case. Horses can't have their joints replaced. So say that you come to realize that you can only afford one horse. This horse has got some significant stifle arthritis. You can make one of two responsible choices. To me, there are only two. You can say, I'm going to really monitor this and follow veterinary advice and keep the horse comfortable until he is not. And I don't mean crippled. It means when it starts to shift, where the horse just isn't really being himself. And even to me, you've waited a little too long when the horse has to show you the pain to that degree. And then I'm going to euthanize at that point as the owner. Or upon diagnosis, I'm going to know where this is going. I'm going to have this conversation, and I'm going to euthanize. Now, those are your two responsible choices. You can't say, I'm going to look for a home to give this horse to so that they can carry the burden I was meant to carry. And hearing that is, again, I know it's hard. And every time I talk about this, people will look at me and they'll tell me the story of the horse they gave away as if it makes it okay. But it doesn't. It doesn't make it okay. It just simply doesn't.
It's a tough subject to talk about with people.
It's emotional and what you feel like is you're trying to demonize people. No, when you know better, you do better. Sometimes you have to hear the the hard conversation.
I will say, every time I make that post about Little Bit, how I put her to sleep, it circulates wildly. It gets 50,000 comments about
Well,
how
and so I think that's a good one. And I know you've told her story before, but I think like a kind of a short version of it is worth retelling here because it fits this. And you could have had more horses, but you at the time were riding and you acquired this horse, and just kind of go over that story.
Yeah, so I bought her because she was so beginner friendly and versatile. She would do anything that you put her into, and I bought her. But she had had hard use before I bought her, and after I'd owned her I think it was about 2 years, she started being really trippy at the canter. She started being really trippy at the canter. So then I just didn't canter her anymore. So I thought, well, she's getting up there. She was like 20 or something. She's getting up there. We just won't canter anymore. Then she started getting trippy at the trot. And so I took her home and had Dr. Hughes out. She x-rayed her and said she had ringbow. And at the time, I didn't have stellar farrier care. Now I think if I had had Misty, I could have given her 1 or 2 more comfortable years because Misty's so particular about her farrier care. But so I stopped riding her, and she acted like herself in the pasture for probably another 10 months or so. And then she started deteriorating, and I put her to sleep because she wasn't herself anymore, even not being ridden. So, and
Right.
it sucked.
Right. And when Susanna says deteriorating, the horse wasn't, well, a lot of people say deteriorating, significant, horrible things have happened. That is not where Susanna had landed.
She started getting so slow coming to the water trough and things like that. When it got really cold, she wouldn't come to the water trough. And it was like one week of cold days that I made that decision because I was like, this is not fair.
But there had been plenty of people who would have given her away. There are plenty of people who would have, and and I say this all the time, and just let her go more years, which also would be the wrong thing. I say this all of the time. My horses are not disadvantaged. However, they are, I guess they're 18 and 19, or maybe 19 and 20 this year. I've had them since they were right under 2 and 3. I would never place these horses. If I could not keep them, I would put them to sleep. I would never let them out there, even as horses that aren't disadvantaged. Now at their age, even though I don't think of 19 and 20-year-old horses as like greatly advanced in age in the way that horses live now, you could say, well, they are older though, so that is a disadvantage. I just wouldn't. I just wouldn't do it. And I'm not telling everybody, if you have a horse in the prime of its life that's a great horse, that's how people learn to ride. That's how people get the heart horse of their dreams and all that. There's nothing wrong with selling horses. There's nothing wrong with placing horses if it's not a fit or you can't keep them. There isn't.
There's also nothing wrong with placing them if you have known the person for years and know they have exemplary horse care.
Right, so say...
And they have a similar philosophy as you do. Because there was a time you were going to give Champagne a Raven.
Yeah, and she was also not at all disadvantaged. I don't have a problem. I mean, we comfortably place horses. Now, we have lots of process in place and so forth, but I know good trainers that buy and sell horses. We aren't opposed to that. And like you said, when we were talking earlier before we started podcasting, you knew there's one of our adoption team that if you were placing your horses and they had interest, you would feel very comfortable with them managing them as metabolic horses.
Right.
So it can be, and these are also horses that haven't been laminitic. I want to stress that. These are horses that could be. These horses aren't like previously founder horses with significant issues. They've been well managed. You just know it wouldn't take much for them to unravel.
No, I mean, somebody could tip them over into laminitis in 6 weeks if I gave them away. They really could.
Right.
I could if I stopped being diligent. I could tip them over in 6 weeks.
So anyway, when we go over things like this, it is hard. It is emotional. Our goal is for horses to have good quality of life and to not go through hard days that could have been avoided. And that's really where it lands. So if you have a disadvantaged horse, and that can be training disadvantages. If you have a horse that's dangerous and you know that it's dangerous, or that it has a severe bucking flip over attacks people. I mean, all of these things come into our PMs all the time.
Right.
You know, we don't want. Some things are correctable. Some things are ingrained.
Rehoming Banjo. If Banjo ever came back, rehoming Banjo, we would have to be
It'd
extraordinarily
be so
careful.
hard. There's a horse that had a severe bucking problem. The trainer corrected it. We didn't really know how I want to. We didn't know how ingrained the bucking was. You know, you get horses turned over as a rescue, and people say the horse bucks, and we never see it buck again. And really, it had to do with the saddle pinched once. Sometimes Banjo, we hadn't seen it demonstrated. We heard the story, and we went to a trainer, and he demonstrated the story.
But he was a younger buckskin gelding of substantial size, so that pretty much substantiates that the story is true, because nobody gives that horse away.
Well, yeah, like why did a nice looking young buckskin come? I mean, but we didn't have evidence of it until he went to the trainer. She worked through it. He's part of her lesson program. He does it, you know, is lovely. No problems whatsoever for years now. However, you know, knowing that that's in the background,
and then she loaned him out for the trail ride, and I saw that guy, and I said, that saddle doesn't fit that horse. That's going to be a problem. He said, it'd be fine. He got on the horse, and the horse bucked him off.
Yeah, so the horse has to be handled just so. So little things like that. That is a horse that if ever he, you know, had ended up outside of what's working for him, could end up in a really bad situation. I would almost think of that as a disadvantaged situation. So in cases where behavioral or physical things exist, you really do have to be cautionary. Auction pens and low-end trading sales are full of the horse that somebody else convinced themselves they were giving away to a good home that had a problem, and they end up being tormented and tortured because somebody wasn't tough enough to make a hard call.
Yeah.
That is not right, and it really does have to stop. And a lot of times it started with the person who meant well.
Like that adorable little girl, a pony.
Oh, tell you what now, that's a good story to end on at Henderson.
No, let's not tell his story, because we can tell his story next time.
Okay, well,
when we tell a horse's story.
There is one that does come to mind, and that's a heartbreaking story. And I know that little fella started with somebody who cared about him, and they didn't want to make a call, and maybe they needed the $1,000 it took at the auction to send him on down the road, and that stuff just has to stop. The road to hell is paved with good intentions, and you know, there's still no excuse. All right, we're going to end on that cheerful note.
We'll leave them hanging so they want to come back next time.
Yeah, come back for
more.
We'll tell Henderson's story next time. All right, until then, I'm Tania.
I'm Suzie.
And that's Horses of Courses.